Hello, Soul Fam! My name is Brittany, and today I am bringing you an episode all about how to not only survive, but thrive during this new season. The sun has entered into Libra, and we are also experiencing the autumn equinox at this time. So, what does that mean as far as the energy that is shifting and what can we expect from this new season of life? Well, I'm here to tell you. This season is all about balance, and you're probably going to get sick of hearing me say that, but it is true. Balance is the overall theme for Libra season. And not only is it a theme for Libra season, but it is so perfectly represented with this autumn equinox, and that is because during the autumn equinox there are equal parts of day and night. I cannot think of a better representation for this than the scales. So Libras are all about balance and carrying things equally. And when I think of the equinox, something that really comes to mind for me is the dark and light that we all have inside of us. I have been really diving into shadow work lately, and a lot of people will refer to their shadow as their dark side. At first, this was really intimidating to me because when I think of something having a dark side, I think that it must be inherently evil, right? A dark side. It sounds scary. And I didn't want to think of myself that way. I don't want to think of myself as scary or possessing things that are evil and bad. But what I think it really means to have a dark side is to have a version of ourselves that we keep hidden and locked away. Maybe it's because we hold a lot of shame in certain areas, or it's kind of hard. We keep it locked away with our shadow self, and not because it's bad or it's evil, but because we've been taught to believe that it's bad and evil. And so in doing shadow work and really working on my spiritual journey, it can be really easy to give a lot of attention to the light side. That's the side I want people to see. I want to show off this illuminated, glowy version of myself because that's the version we've been taught is worthwhile. But what if I told you that you can't fully access your illuminated side, your light side, without also giving attention to your dark side? We can't just ignore the things lurking in our shadows and only pay attention to the beautiful, easy things. Imagine if you had a garden and on one side of the garden you planted some seeds. You have no problem watering them and doing what it takes to make those seeds grow because you fully believe something beautiful will come from them. But also in your garden, there are weeds and rodents. You wouldn't just ignore them because they were scary and you didn't want to deal with them. But let's say you did. Let's say you pretended that they didn't exist and it made you pay extra close attention to the good side of the garden. Maybe you started putting up some fencing to try and keep the rodents out. Well, you would still have to tend to the weeds because if you didn't, they would eventually just overtake the entire garden. You have to treat the soil and create a healthy environment for things to grow. And in order to do that, in order to really create something beautiful, we also have to face the parts that are not so beautiful, that are not so fun, the dark, scary, shadowy parts. I honestly can't think of a better time to do this than in Libra season, because we are truly in a time where balance is necessary. And that's not just within ourselves, but with everything. I know a lot of people struggle to find a work-life balance, and Libra is the sign of harmony, learning to live a harmonious, balanced, peaceful life. So what are some ways we can do that? Well, Libra is one of the 4 cardinal signs of the zodiac, and the cardinal signs are kind of known as the initiators of the wheel, since they bring with them a new season. So this is really a time where new ideas or habits are going to start forming. People who are born under cardinal signs tend to have a pioneer-like attitude, so that energy will be really prominent during this next month. It's also the feeling of kind of forging a new path in our lives, but doing so in a very healthy and compassionate way. When people think of Libra, they tend to think of someone who is really indecisive, and while that can definitely be the case, I know I've experienced that with a lot of Libras in my life. A seasoned and mature Libra has this really lovely energy where they have taken on their role as a leader, and they don't come charging in, bossing people around. Instead, they lead with love, and that is something I think is really important to keep in mind during this time. Even if it's just with yourself, if you're trying to start something new, lead yourself into this with love. Be gentle and compassionate with yourself during this new phase. There's definitely a time where we need to show ourselves some tough love, but this isn't it. You can be a leader and still be soft and gentle and loving, especially as we're coming out of Virgo season, which was all about really meticulous and precise energy. Things are really shifting now because we were just in a phase where we really needed to zone in and focus on some things and pay really close attention, but now we can kind of mellow out and just learn to take a breath and really find that peace within ourselves. I know that for me, Virgo season was really an intense time of analyzing my habits and beginning to work on things I really wanted to change about myself. And I did need that time to take a closer look at my life and be like, okay, these are the areas where I need some work. This is what I can improve upon. And I had to be really diligent and almost critical of myself. I had to acknowledge where I was slacking and kind of go in and nitpick my behaviors, because that was the only way I could identify where the problems were. And while yes, that step is necessary, we can't be like that all of the time, because how exhausting would it be to constantly be critiquing yourself to that extent? It's fine for a little bit to be honest with ourselves, but long term, that would be so unhealthy. So coming from that place and stepping into this new season where we can shift our mindset to a place where we are a little more fair to ourselves, it's a much needed change of pace. With Virgo season, we learned to identify what needed to be fixed, and now with the Libra energy, we can kind of unite the different parts of ourselves and actually begin to fix them. So being ruled by Venus, Libras have a really beautiful love and appreciation for art and all things that are beautiful. So taking the time to fill our spaces with things we resonate with, it can be really beneficial. You know, it's fall, so it is definitely time to get out our cute and cozy decorations. For me, I'm really looking forward to creating a nice little sacred altar space for myself, and it's perfect because there's all this witchy spiritual decor out in stores right now, and you know, most people are buying that because it's spooky season, but for me, it just makes really great everyday decor, so I feel really lucky about that. We can create a playlist of really beautiful, light, autumnal, dreamy music. Since Libra is an air sign, I think of really light, kind of folksy music playing in the background during this season. Spending time in nature is also going to be very important because summer's over and we're stepping into autumn. And in most places in North America, that means that the air is cool, the air is crisp. It's not stuffy like it was a month ago. We're in an air sign. And so getting outside, being surrounded by nature, breathing in the fresh air, it will do wonders for our headspace at this time. Another important thing that we can do during Libra season is to really tap into our creative side. It's not only important to observe art and surround ourselves with things that we find beautiful, but creating it ourselves will be very healing and very cathartic and therapeutic. And again, since we're getting into the bigger holidays, it's a really great time to maybe work on some holiday decor, work on some cute fall crafts to fill your space with. This will not only help you unleash that creative energy, but then you'll have really beautiful things to fill your space with. So it kind of serves dual purposes. And if you wanted to kind of have a triple threat, you can incorporate some nature into those crafts. Focusing on art right now will really help to keep you in a really balanced headspace. And that is something that can really be a great asset when we are looking to find balance between work and our personal life. It's really important to have those outlets and to give ourselves time and space to create and unwind and just kind of go with the flow. Take a step back from our responsibilities and just kind of enjoy creating for the sake of creating. And if you're someone who has to create for a living, if you're an artist or a content creator somehow, finding new crafts is going to be really important because it will allow you to create, not because you have to, not because you need it as part of your livelihood, but just because you love to do it. So find ways to break free of the pressure of feeling like you need to create. Do it because it makes you feel good and it's something that, you can express your soul with. I think art and being creative is going to be one of the biggest ways we can find balance and peace during this season. And I'm actually going to create a Spotify playlist and I'll link it in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description box. So you can access that if you want to. One really cool thing about Libra is that it is the only sign ruled by a planet that is named after a female. So feminine energy is so strong right now, and regardless of what your gender identity might be, that is something every person should be tapping into, is their feminine energy during this time. A great way to do that is to allow yourself to prioritize pleasure, and this could definitely be in a sexual sense, but more importantly, the things that bring you excitement and set your soul on fire. This is a time where it could be really helpful to allow yourself to give in to some of those guilty pleasures you might have. What's coming to mind for me is, how during the summer people are so focused on their body image and they're eating really healthy, fresh foods, which, yes, fresh and healthy foods are amazing. But then during the colder months, when all that cozy food is so plentiful, we're in such a restrictive mindset, or we feel so much shame because we just spent the entire summer obsessing over our body and everything we put in it. And we don't allow ourselves to indulge, even though it would feel good to ditch the fruit for a second and maybe eat a pie. And I do just want to say that you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and you should never feel guilty or bad about it. But that's a discussion for another episode. Autumn is a time when so many things are in abundance, and so when I think of allowing ourselves to give in to our desires and prioritize pleasure, I just get this image of a really bountiful harvest. It's a time where our desires are abundant and everything is so readily available. It isn't a time of restriction, of holding back. It's definitely a time of just going all in. So just know that it's okay to give in to your desires and to do it freely without a sense of shame or guilt or any negative feelings, because that will really ruin the experience for you if you're going into it with a negative mindset. Allow yourself to indulge in the things that bring you pleasure. It isn't selfish, it isn't wrong. It's actually necessary to create a more balanced and harmonious way of life. And so being ruled by Venus, right, during Libra season, Knowing where Venus is in your birth chart is going to be really helpful because Venus represents things like courtship and relationships and what your values are. So if you want to take a look at your birth chart, it could really help you to get some clarity during this time. For example, for me, Venus is in Sagittarius, which is also my sun sign, and I actually have quite a bit of Sagittarian placements in my chart. So having a Sagittarian placement for Venus, I have a really equal mix of being lighthearted and also serious, which again is all about the balance. And I have to remember to keep that balance in mind sometimes because I can definitely tend to go heavily one way or the other, especially when it comes to my relationships with other people. It also means that for me, it's really pleasurable to have alone time and space to grow on my own because I value that introspective time with myself so much, almost above anything else that someone else can give me. I need that time alone to just sit with my thoughts and ponder life and get to know myself better. That time is really important for me, and if I don't have that, it definitely affects my relationships with other people. I'm also really prone to love-hate relationships, and even just saying that, I have to laugh because, again, what is that an example of? Balance. I recommend looking into your birth chart. It can be confusing if you aren't familiar with astrology, but it is so helpful in understanding yourself and who you are at your core, and also in terms of what each season means for you as an individual. I know that a lot of people think that just because they aren't a Libra season doesn't have any bearing or effect on them, and man, that just could not be further from the truth. I'll leave a link below if you want to check out your birth charts. Again, I really recommend it. Your astrological makeup is so much deeper than just what your sun sign is. There really is so much to it, and I would actually really like to do an entire episode on that because there is a lot to learn. So yeah, understanding what brings you pleasure and what your needs are when it comes to love is so important, especially right now. For me, I know that this is usually the time where I tend to kind of hibernate and retreat inward, and that makes total sense considering where Venus is in my chart. My perfect autumn vibe is honestly just me sitting in a room with a bunch of candles, reading a thought-provoking book, and having a really delicious warm drink and a snack. That is definitely what sets my soul on fire during this season. Those are the pleasures I seek, and they might seem simple, but they don't always have to be extravagant or scandalous. I mean, they definitely can be if that's your thing, but simple pleasures are kind of necessary because they're things that we can seek out every day. And it's okay to give into them during this season, and hopefully we can all learn to take that with us into our everyday lives, that it's okay to give in to our desires because in doing so, we are actually learning to live a more balanced life by allowing ourselves time to soak up the things that we enjoy. I just pulled a card, and the one I pulled was the King of Swords, which is honestly so perfect. The swords symbolize the air signs, and as we all know, Libra is indeed an air sign. And so what this is telling me right off the bat is that right now is a season to really have a present mindset. The sword suit is all about our mental state of consciousness because air signs rule the head, right? It's associated with our thoughts. Another thing about swords is that they are double-edged. And again, I feel like I've said this a million times by now, but balance. Even when it comes to the element of air itself, it can be basically invisible if it wants to be, or it can be really present and chaotic. There are times when we might need to be slowly, calmly moving, but there are also times when we need to come at things full force and kind of demolish anything that stands in our way. But we can't be one or the other. We have to learn how to let both versions coexist within ourselves so that way we can tap into either whenever we need them. So with the King of Swords, this is a sign of stepping into your power. And it's specifically your intellectual power and learning to live your truth. You're thinking clearly and you're ready to take the lead and make some decisions that you've maybe needed to come to a conclusion on for quite some time now. Rather than leaning heavily on one side or the other, you are in a great position to assess any situation from an unbiased point of view, and this will allow you to stand more firmly in your truth. You aren't seeing things from a skewed perspective, you're finally seeing things for exactly what they are, and this will enable you to make some fair judgment calls because you'll be doing so from a logical, level-headed mindset. What's interesting is that the King of Swords is often known to be a symbol of the legal system, and that is also represented with the Libra sign itself. It's a symbol of justice and consultation, seeking advice, and being treated with fairness. This could definitely mean that it would be beneficial to consult an expert on something that you might be struggling with. And it could be legal, but it also could be in regards to finances, or even if you're diving deeper into your spiritual journey, consulting with a mentor or someone you look up to kind of help you navigate through this uncertain time. Another thing that comes to mind is seeking professional help when it comes to mental health, seeking out that authority and guidance from someone who is specialized in areas that you might struggle. And in doing so, this will actually help you get a better understanding, which again will help you to view your situation from a more logical point of view, having that outside perspective from someone who is a little more educated on the situation than you are. So that's the minor arcana card that I pulled. And the major arcana card that represents Libra is, of course, Justice. So when we look at the Justice card, we have these two pillars on either side, which symbolize balance and structure. There is also a purple veil kind of hung loosely in the background, and this is a representation of compassion. Remember earlier I said that Libra energy is one of compassion and fairness. In the right hand, the Justice is holding a sword, and this symbolizes the logical, fair mindset that is needed to implement a just ruling. It stands upright, almost proud, which means confidence in the decision that's being made. There isn't any back and forth or questioning if you've made the right choice. It's the confidence of knowing that you took the facts and you logically made a fair decision. It's knowing that the decision has been made and it was the right decision. However, the sword is a double-edged one, which tells us that there are consequences, no matter what our actions may be. Every action or decision comes with its own set of consequences. The left hand carries a set of scales, and this is a symbol of our intuition and how, yes, we do need logic and we need factual information, but we also need our intuition just as much. We often have a gut feeling about what is right and what is wrong based on our values, and this can be just as important when it comes to making a decision as looking at facts. I know at this point I'm beating it into the ground, but balance is honestly and truly going to be your superpower during this season. If we had, too much logic and we ignored our intuition, we wouldn't really be comfortable always with the decisions that we made. And yet, if we just jumped and kind of went with our intuition and ignored logic, we also wouldn't be happy with the decisions we made. We need both, and we need to learn how to use them in unity so that we can go forward knowing that, yes, I went with my intuition, but I also assessed the facts, and together those two things brought me to where I am. When we tip the scales on either side and throw our balance off, this is when things start to feel really out of place. And even if we feel like we're tipping the scale in our favor, it's only a matter of time before everything comes crashing down. I want you to just take a deep breath, close your eyes as long as you are not driving and you are safely able to do so. And I want you to visualize a scale with two sides, not the kind that you would step on to, see how much you weigh. We will call the left side of the scale our pleasure side, and the right side we will call our obligations. If we put too much weight and emphasis on our obligations, sooner or later it is going to start to feel so heavy and so unbearable, and it will literally begin to weigh us down to the point that we can't continue on. That's obviously a really miserable place to be in, and that's where, we can start to feel depressed and hopeless, and that comes from putting too much emphasis on our responsibilities and ignoring the things that bring us joy. However, if we do the same thing and we only invest our time into our pleasures, well, then it's only a matter of time before that comes crashing down on us. And eventually, it won't be this euphoric escape from reality and, this sense of relief and peace. Instead, it's going to become a huge burden. And if we only focused on the things that brought us pleasure and joy, and if we ignored our responsibilities, then sooner or later, our responsibilities are going to become this really daunting, impossible feat, right? And so by allowing ourselves to give equal portions of our time and attention to both our responsibilities, our obligations, and our pleasures, this is how we can begin to live in a healthy balance. If we tend to them appropriately, our obligations aren't going to weigh us down because we're giving them the proper amount of time that they deserve. We're taking care of the things that need to be taken care of so that once that's completed, we're free to give ourselves to the things that we really enjoy. And also, by tending to our responsibilities, our pleasures don't overtake our life because there's something that we look forward to. It's almost like a reward to us for handling the stuff that needed to be handled. If we allow ourselves a healthy dose of our pleasures and our desires, then it doesn't distract us from our responsibilities. Knowing that the things in our life that sustain us are just as important as the things that ignite our soul is really going to be something we have to keep in mind during this time. And I truly hope that this season is one where you learn to nurture both sides of the scale. We need structure and productivity, but we also need to have fun and unwind. And learning how to have an appropriate balance of each of those things is really going to help us create a truly magical Libra season. I'm so excited to walk into this new season of life, and for any Libras listening, I hope that you have an absolutely magical birthday. I hope that you are reveling in your energy right now because I know that I am. Libra is such a great sign, and I love the energy that comes along with this season so much. I'm so thankful for Libra season because it helps bring me back to my center, and I definitely need that right now. Thank you so much for listening, and if you could do me a huge favor, I would love if you would rate and review this podcast, or subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. I will be back next Wednesday with another episode, and I'm so thankful for anyone who has joined in and listened so far. I hope that you have an incredible Libra season and that you learn how to operate in harmony and balance during this time. Thank you so much for listening to Soul Call, and I will see you next time.